can't afford the beach house this year," my parents said. 2 weeks later, I saw photos of them and my siblings in a private villa. Then they called me for help with their rental problem. We just can't afford the beach house this year, Sarah. Times are tough." My mother's voice crackled through the phone, laden with what I now knew was fake concern. "Your father's business isn't doing as well as we hoped." I sat in my Manhattan apartment, staring at the calendar where I'd already blocked off the last 2 weeks of July. Our family's traditional beach house vacation time for the past 25 years. The same vacation I'd already taken time off work for, the same one I've been looking forward to all year. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 32, I was about to discover just how deeply family betrayal could cut. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "I could help with the costs. I know how much this tradition means to everyone, especially to me," I thought, remembering all the summers spent at our Hamptons beach house. The memories stretching back to when I was just a little girl building sandcastles with my siblings. "Oh, honey, no," Mom replied quickly. "We couldn't possibly take your money. It's better if we all just skip it this year. Your brother, Michael, and Emma have already agreed it's for the best." I should have caught the slight hesitation in her voice when she mentioned my siblings. Should have noticed how she rushed through their names. But I was too busy trying to process the loss of our annual family gathering, right? I said finally. "Well, maybe we can plan something smaller later in the year." "Of course, darling. Listen, I have to run. Your father needs me to help him with some paperwork. We'll talk soon." The call ended abruptly, leaving you with a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. I brushed it off, attributing it to my general disappointment. After all, what other explanation could there be? 2 weeks later, I found out exactly what other explanation there could be. I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw it. A photo posted by my younger sister, Emma. My sandwich fell from my suddenly numb fingers as I stared at the image. My entire family lounging on our beach house deck, drinks in hand, a golden sunset behind them. The caption read, "Perfect start to our annual family vacation. #list, #familytime, #sunset. The time since Shove It had been posted just hours ago. They hadn't canceled the trip. They had just canceled me. My hands shook as I scrolled through more photos. There was Michael manning the grill, Dad opening a bottle of champagne, Mom arranging her signature seashell centerpiece on the outdoor dining table. Another post from Michael. "Nothing better than tradition. Annual family beach vacation in full swing." The word family felt like a slap across my face. I sat there, my untouched lunch growing warm as years of subtle exclusions and dismissals suddenly clicked into place. The forgotten invitations to weekend brunches, the family dinners I heard about after the fact, the group photos where everyone seemed to know about the color coordination except me. But this was different. This was our beach house tradition. The one thing I thought was sacred. The beach house had been in our family since before I was born. My grandfather bought it as a surprise for my grandmother in 1965, and it had been our summer gathering place ever since. I've learned to swim in that ocean, had my first kiss under that boardwalk, and celebrated every major milestone with family dinners on that deck. I pulled up my mother's number, then stopped. What would confronting them accomplish? They had already shown me exactly where I stood on their priority list. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching through old emails. There had to be a reason they felt so confident in excluding me, and I was going to find it. 3 hours later, I had my answer, and it made my blood run cold. Last year, when the family trust was being restructured after Grandpa's death, I'd signed a stack of papers Dad had brought to my office. "Just routine stuff," he'd said. "Making sure everything's properly organized for tax purposes." I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father, a successful real estate developer who'd always handled the family's financial matters. So I'd signed where he pointed, not bothering to read the fine print. Now, looking at the copy I finally dug out of my files, I realized what I'd actually signed. A document transferring my share of the beach house ownership to a family LLC controlled by my parents. My hands clenched around the paper. They had planned this probably for months. Get me to sign away my rights, then slowly edge me out of family gatherings until I was nothing more than a distant relative they had to tolerate at major holidays. But they had made one crucial mistake. Before my grandfather passed away, he pulled me aside during his last Christmas with us. "Sarah," he'd said, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever. "I've left something for you with Harold. Promise me you'll go see him if anything feels wrong with the family." Harold Mason was my grandfather's lawyer and, more importantly, his closest friend. I dismissed the conversation at the time, assuming it was just the ramblings of a dying man. Now I wondered what exactly my grandfather had seen coming. I called Harold's office immediately. "Sarah Mitchell for Harold Mason," I said when his secretary answered. "Tell him it's about my grandfather's final instructions." Minutes later, Harold's familiar gravelly voice came through the line. "Sarah, I've been wondering when you'd call. You have? Your grandfather was a smart man. He knew exactly how things would play out once he was gone. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I glanced at my calendar, already reaching for my laptop to clear my schedule. I'll be there. That night, I barely slept. My phone kept buzzing with more family photos from the beach house, sunset walks, seafood dinners, game nights. Each notification felt like another twist of the knife. I turned my phone face down, but I couldn't turn off my thoughts quite so easily. The next morning, I arrived at Harold's office precisely at 9 a.m. The office looked exactly as I remembered from childhood visits with my grandfather. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound law books lining the walls, and that same familiar scent of coffee and old paper. Harold stood as I entered, his tall frame slightly stooped now with age, but his blue eyes as sharp as ever. "Sarah," he said warmly, "you look just like your grandmother." He gestured for me to sit, then walked to his safe. "Your grandfather left this for you," he said, returning with a thick envelope, along with very specific instructions about when to give it to you. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter written in my grandfather's distinctive scroll along with several legal documents. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then what I feared has come to pass. Your father has always been ambitious and your mother too easily swayed by his dreams of legacy and status. I've watched them slowly push aside anyone who doesn't fit their perfect family image just as they did with your Aunt Claire years ago." I remembered Aunt Claire vaguely, Mom's sister who had chosen to distance herself from the family when I was young. I'd always accepted the family's version of events that Claire had abandoned us. Now I wondered if there was another side to that story. "But I've made provisions," the letter continued. "The beach house isn't just a property. It's the heart of our family's memories. While your father may think he's cleverly consolidated control, he's overlooked something important. Check the original deed from 1965. Harold handed me another document, the original property deed. As I read through it, my eyes widened. "The beach house property," Harold explained, "includes not just the house, but also the private road leading to it and the small boat dock. Your grandfather never merged these parcels when he bought them. And while your father may have maneuvered to get control of the house itself, the road and dock are still under the original trust." I finished understanding, dawning. "A trust that according to these papers now belongs to me." Harold smiled. "Exactly." Harold smiled, reminding me suddenly and strongly of my grandfather. "Exactly. Without access to the private road, the beach house is essentially landlocked. The public access road is 2 miles down the coast and the neighboring properties have repeatedly blocked any attempts to create a new access point." I sat back, my mind racing. "So they need my permission just to reach the house." "Indeed." "Your grandfather believed that sometimes people need to be reminded of the importance of family, all family members, not just the convenient ones." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. Emma had posted again, "Another perfect day in paradise. #list. #family forever." I looked at Harold, a plan already forming in my mind. "I think it's time for my family to learn a lesson about the true meaning of blessed." I spent the rest of the morning with Harold reviewing my options and forming a strategy. By the time I left his office, I had everything I needed to remind my family that actions have consequences. That evening, as I sat in my apartment looking through old beach house photos, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Sarah, honey," she said, her voice tense. "We seem to have a situation here at the beach house." I smiled, knowing exactly what was coming. "Oh, what kind of situation?" "Well, the strangest thing. There's apparently some issue with the access road, some sort of permit problem. We can't get our cars out of the driveway." I could hear voices in the background. Dad arguing with someone, Emma's distinctive whine, Michael's attempts to problem solve. "That's terrible," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Almost as terrible as discovering my family went on vacation without me after lying about canceling it." Silence on the other end. "Then you know about that? Instagram is a very public platform, Mom. But don't worry. I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, you've got the whole family there to help." "Well, almost the whole family." "Sarah, wait." I hung up, then turned off my phone. They had 2 weeks of vacation planned at the beach house. 2 weeks to contemplate their choices while dealing with their increasingly limited access options. Sometimes I thought, looking at my grandfather's letter again, the best lessons come from unexpected teachers, and this lesson was just beginning. The call started at 6 a.m. the next morning. First, "Dad, Sarah, this is ridiculous. You mean to fix whatever you've done with the access road? We have dinner reservations at Le Marais tonight." Then, "Mom, honey, I know you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle things. We were just trying to have a quiet family vacation." "Michael, sis, come on, you're being petty. So we have one vacation without you. It's not the end of the world." "Emma, you're ruining everything." My Instagram followers were expecting daily beach content. I let them all go to voicemail. each message more desperate than the last. Instead of responding, I spent the morning with Harold reviewing the next phase of our plan. "Your father's trying to find a workaround," Harold said, hanging up his phone. "He's already contacted 3 different lawyers looking for loopholes." I nodded, unsurprised, and they've all told him the same thing. The ROA access is ironclad. "Your grandfather made sure of that." Harold smiled, shuffling through some papers, "but that's not even the best part." He handed me a document that made my eyebrows rise. The dock too. Your family's fancy boats aren't going anywhere without your permission. And according to the harbor master, they've got quite the lineup of water activities planned for the next 2 weeks. I thought about all the summers I'd spent on those boats, learning to sail with my grandfather, watching sunsets with my siblings, more memories they tried to steal. "Have they figured it out yet?" I asked. "That I'm behind this. Your father suspects. He called me this morning, trying to throw his weight around." I reminded him that I represent your interest now, not his. My phone buzzed again. Another family group chat message I wasn't supposed to be part of, but could still see. "Thanks to Michael's technical ineptitude. Mom, the harbor master says we can't take the boats out. Something about dock access rights. Dad, this is Sarah's doing. Has to be. Emma, how could she do this to us? My influencer cruise is scheduled for tomorrow. Michael, Dad, can't you just buy access rights or something? Dad. Working on it. Don't worry. I'll handle this." I showed Harold the messages. He always says that I'll handle this. It's his way of maintaining control. "Well," Harold said, eyes twinkling, "he's welcome to try, but your grandfather built this plan to be airtight. The only way they're getting access is through you." By day 3, the situation at the beach house had reached a breaking point. Without road access, they couldn't get their cars out to go shopping, visit restaurants, or attend any of their planned activities. The dock restrictions meant their boats sat uselessly in their slips. Even their grocery deliveries were being held at the main road, forcing them to walk 2 miles in the summer heat to retrieve them. Emma's Instagram stories had shifted from perfect family vacation to increasingly frantic updates about being stranded in paradise. Michael's wife was threatening to call her parents to come rescue them. Mom had resorted to hourly texts, alternating between guilt trips and attempts at reconciliation, but it was Dad's email that finally made me decide to make my move. Subject: "This childish behavior ends now. Sarah, you're trying to prove a point." Message received: "But you're only hurting yourself. If you continue this ridiculous power play, you'll force me to take more permanent measures regarding your position in this family. You have until tomorrow to restore access. Dad." I forwarded the email to Harold, then picked up my phone. "Mom, we need to talk. All of us in person." "Oh, thank goodness," she breathed. "Yes, of course. When?" "I'll be there in 2 hours. Make sure everyone's present." The drive to the beach house felt surreal. How many times had I made this trip excited for family time ahead? Now I was driving into battle armed with truth instead of beach toys. When I pulled up to the access gate, I saw them all gathered on the deck watching me. I used my key, the one thing they couldn't take away, to open the gate and drive through. The humidity hit me as soon as I stepped out of my car, thick and heavy, like the tension in the air. Dad stood at the top of the deck stairs, trying to project authority despite his rumpled vacation clothes. "Finally ready to be reasonable?" he asked as I climbed the stairs. I didn't answer until I reached the deck, taking in the scattered evidence of their disrupted vacation. Empty wine bottles, half-play board games, phones plugged into every available outlet as they desperately sought entertainment without their usual activities. "I thought we should all talk," I said, looking at each family member in turn. "About truth, about family, about what those words really mean. If this is about not including you in the vacation," Mom started, "this is about so much more than that." I cut her off. "This is about years of systematic exclusion, about lying to me, manipulating me, trying to strip away my inheritance piece by piece." I pulled out the document I'd signed last year. "Like this, Dad. Want to explain what this really was?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It was a necessary restructuring. It was theft," I said flatly. "You tricked me into signing away my rights to the house, just like you've been trying to trick me out of every other part of this family." "That's not fair," Emma protested. "You're always so busy with work, never making time for family things." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my calendar. Like the 3 family dinners last month, I was never told about, or Michael's birthday lunch, or the weekend planning meeting for this vacation. Silence fell over the deck. "But you know what?" I continued. "You all made one crucial mistake. You forgot about Grandpa's foresight, about the trust he left me, about the fact that this house is worthless without the access he made sure I controlled." I saw the moment it hit them, really hit them, that they weren't in control anymore. Dad's face flushed red. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. Emma's eyes filled with tears. And Michael just looked tired. So here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out the papers Harold had prepared. We're going to restructure things properly this time. Equal access, equal rights, equal say in all family properties. No more secret meetings, no more manipulated documents, no more exclusive vacations. And if we refuse, Dad challenged. I smiled, thinking of my grandfather. Then I hope you all enjoy walking 2 miles for your groceries. The road access restrictions can last indefinitely. The negotiations took hours. By the time we finished, the sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, just like I remembered from countless family dinners on this very deck. But this sunset felt different. This sunset marked a new chapter, one where I wasn't just included in the family, but it helped reshape it into something stronger, more honest, more real. As I drove home that evening, my phone buzzed with a new Instagram notification. Emma had posted a photo of all of us together on the deck, looking somewhat worse for wear, but genuinely smiling. The caption read, "Learning what family really means. #list, #new beginnings." This time, I didn't turn my phone face down. Instead, I liked the post and added a comment. Here's to new traditions. The week after our confrontation at the beach house felt like waking up from a long dream. The family group chat, which had been suspiciously quiet, suddenly came alive with tentative attempts at normal conversation. Mom shared her famous clam chowder recipe. Michael posted photos of his kids building sandcastles. Even Emma's influencer content had shifted from perfectly staged photos to candid family moments. But it was the email from my father that truly surprised me. "Sarah, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Harold showed me some of Dad's old letters, things he wrote about watching our family dynamic change over the years, about his concerns for you and his disappointment in me. Would you have coffee with me tomorrow? Just us." "Dad." I met him at our old breakfast spot, a small cafe near the beach where we used to get cinnamon rolls after early morning fishing trips. He was already there when I arrived, looking older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I found these in my office," he said without preamble, flighting a stack of photos across the table. They were from my childhood, me helping him review property blueprints, sitting on his shoulders during beach walks, proudly showing him my first real estate analysis in college. "When did I stop seeing you?" he asked quietly. "When did I start viewing you as competition instead of my daughter?" I picked up one of the photos, me at 18, beaming as I held up my acceptance letter to business school. "Maybe around the time I started succeeding on my own, when I became someone who could challenge your decisions instead of just following them." He nodded slowly. "Your grandfather, he warned me about this, said I was so focused on building a legacy that I was forgetting what that legacy was supposed to be about." The waitress brought our coffee, giving me a moment to gather my thoughts. "You know what hurts the most?" I finally said, "Not the exclusion, not even the manipulation with the house. It's that you thought you had to do any of it. That you couldn't just talk to me, work with me, be proud of me." "I am proud of you," he said quickly. "Terrified of you sometimes, if I'm honest. You're smarter than I was at your age. More capable. More principled. Like Mom always says, I'm just like Grandpa." I smiled slightly, stirring my coffee. "Yes, you are. And that scared me too. Dad, he always put family first, even when it meant less profit or slower growth." I convinced myself I knew better that consolidating control was the same as protecting the family. A memory surfaced, Grandpa teaching me to sail, explaining how fighting against the wind often meant losing to it. "Sometimes," he'd said, "the strongest position is learning to work with the forces around you instead of against them." "We can work together, Dad," I said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. That's all I ever wanted. To be part of building something, not just watching from the outside. He gripped my hand tightly. "I like that. But first, I need to make things right." Over the next few days, the changes began. Dad had his lawyers draw up new ownership agreements for all the family properties, ensuring transparent and equal access for everyone. Mom organized a proper family meeting, the first in years where everyone was actually invited to discuss summer plans and holiday schedules. Even my siblings seemed to be coming around. Michael asked for my help reviewing his business expansion plans, something he'd always gone to Dad for before. Emma, surprisingly, turned out to be the most direct about making amends. "I was jealous," she admitted during an impromptu sister lunch. "You made everything look so easy. Career, independence, knowing exactly what you wanted. It was easier to exclude you than to admit I admired you." The beach house, once a symbol of our family's fractures, began to heal too. We started a new tradition of Sunday brunches on the deck, everyone taking turns cooking and cleaning. The boats came out of their slips, carrying different combinations of family members on evening cruises. Harold came to one of these brunches, bringing with him another letter from my grandfather. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading the second letter, it means you've done what I hoped. Use your strength, not just to stand up for yourself, but to help heal our family. The road and dock weren't just about access to a house. They were about creating a path back to each other. Remember, the strongest foundations aren't built on control, but on trust, on love, on the kind of strength that knows when to hold firm and when to extend a hand. Take care of them, sweetheart. Take care of yourself. All my love, Grandpa. I looked around the deck at my family. Dad and Michael discussing property developments, Mom and Emma planning the next family vacation, Harold sharing stories about Grandpa with my nieces and nephews. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and new beginnings. This was what Grandpa had wanted all along. Not just for me to stand up for myself, but for all of us to remember what family really meant. To rebuild not just our relationships, but our understanding of how to nurture them. The Sunday brunches became a staple, each one feeling more natural than the last. We weren't perfect. There were still disagreements, still moments of tension, but now we faced them together openly, honestly. And every time I opened the gate to the access road, I said a quiet thank you to my grandfather for teaching me that sometimes the strongest way to protect what you love is to make sure everyone has a path to reach it. 1 year later, I stood on the beach house deck watching the sunrise, a cup of coffee warming my hands against the early morning chill. The past 12 months had transformed not just our family dynamics, but the property itself. Together, we'd renovated the beach house, each of us contributing our unique strengths, Dad's development expertise, Michael's eye for modern amenities, Emma's surprisingly good design sense, and Mom's ability to preserve the nostalgic touches that made the house special. I handled the project management, ensuring everyone's voice was heard while keeping us on budget and schedule. The result was stunning. A perfect blend of old and new, just like our rebuilt family relationships. Early morning reflection. I turned to find Dad joining me on the deck, 2 fresh cups of coffee in hand. Over the past year, this had become our tradition. Quiet conversations at dawn, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Just thinking about how much has changed, I replied, accepting the coffee. Remember last summer? He chuckled, but there was a hint of regret in his voice. Hard to forget being stranded in paradise, though we deserved it. We all needed that wake-up call, I said, watching the waves roll in, not just about the beach house, but about what we were becoming as a family. Inside, I could hear the house coming alive. Mom in the kitchen starting breakfast, Emma's kids giggling as they planned their beach adventures, Michael's wife singing as she got ready for her morning swim. Your grandfather would be proud, Dad said softly, not just of you for standing up to us, but for how you helped us become better, stronger. I smiled remembering Grandpa's letters. He always said the true measure of strength isn't in what you can take, but in what you can restore. The past year had proven that we've learned to communicate openly, to celebrate each other's successes without competition, to support without smothering. Even the family business had benefited. Our different perspectives and skills had created a more dynamic, adaptable company. Mom appeared with a tray of breakfast pastries. Family meeting in 10 minutes, he announced. We need to plan the holiday schedule. These meetings, once sources of manipulation and exclusion, have become something we all looked forward to open, honest discussions where everyone's input mattered. As we gathered around the deck table, all of us together, no one left out. I pulled out an envelope I'd been saving for this moment. Before we start, I said, I have something to share. Inside was a document I'd been working on with Harold, a new trust structure for the beach house and its access points. One that would protect future generations from mistakes we've made. It's called the Mitchell Family Legacy Trust. I explained, passing out copies. It ensures that this place will always belong to all of us. And more importantly, that no one can ever be excluded. The road, the dock, the house, they're all legally bound together now. One family, one property, one legacy. Dad read through the document, his eyes glistening. Just like your grandfather wanted. Just like we all needed. I corrected gently. Emma looked up from her copy. There's a clause here about mandatory family vacations. I laughed. Minimum of 4 weeks per year where the house must be open to all family members. No more secret getaways. As if we want those anymore, Michael said, bouncing his youngest on his knee. The best part of being here is having everyone together. Mom raised her coffee cup to family. All of us, always. We all joined the toast, our voices mixing with the sound of waves and seabirds, looking around at their faces, happy, united, real. I knew we found something more valuable than property rights or legal access. We'd found our way back to being a true family. Later that afternoon, as we all sprawled on beach chairs watching the kids play in the surf, I reread Grandpa's letters. His words about strength and healing felt different now, filled with the wisdom of experience rather than just hope. The road to the beach house was no longer just an access point. It had become a symbol of our journey from broken trust to renewed bonds, from exclusion to embrace, from control to love. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Hema started setting up her camera for a family photo. Not for Instagram this time, But for us, a real moment with real smiles. Everyone together, she called out. And we were together stronger, finally understanding what Grandpa had known all along. That the greatest legacy any family can have is the love they share and the bridges they build back to each other. The photo she captured showed exactly that. All of us, imperfect but happy, our faces glowing with sunset light and genuine joy.